today. He's considered one of the most popular and more grounded and relatable heroes in comparison to the others. Definitely Marvel's most popular hero to date.
Yeah, but just because he's always trying to do what's right doesn't mean he always succeeds. In fact, sometimes it's a wonder we don't consider him the villain based on some of his dastardly and destructive actions.
Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight.
And I'm your host, Patty D. Today we'll be reminiscing back on some of Peter's most disastrous deeds and their consequences as we count down the top 10 worst things Spider-Man has done.
Now, let's get to it.
Almost let a little girl die in surgery. In Amazing Spider-Man number 700, Doc Ock switches minds with Spider-Man, sort of. Doc Ock, now in Spider-Man's body, is exposed to all of Peter's memories and experiences, and it definitely has an effect. He decides to become a superhero, calling himself the Superior Spider-Man. However, in the first issue of Superior Spider-Man, it's revealed that a portion of Peter is still residing inside of the body, and it has some control over Doc Ock's actions. So later in Superior Spider-Man number 8, the Superior Spidey finds a device that he can use to get rid of the last bits of Peter Parker that remain in his brain. However, in order to gain access to this device, he first has to perform surgery on a little girl. So this leads to a scene where Ghost Spider-Man is like in the background, basically trying to prevent Doc Ock from doing the surgery, knowing that Doc is going to finish off Peter Parker after he's successful. However, Peter does eventually relent and Doc succeeds in his surgery, but for a moment there it kind of seemed like Pete was ready to let a little girl die so that he could live. Not exactly Spidey's finest hour.
Number 9, killed MJ. So Peter's track record when it comes to loved ones isn't as bad as someone like Daredevil, but hey, it isn't great either. In alternate universes especially, Spider-Man has caused a lot of harm to those that he's loved, and I mean a lot. And even in the main continuity, his track record isn't so great. In the Marvel Zombies universe, Spider-Man was transformed into a zombie, and as this happened, felt the uncontrollable urge taking over him. He was like, I'm so hungry, I gotta eat people. He tried to tell his loved ones to get away from him, but it was too late, and he ended up not only killing, but full on eating both Mary Jane and his Aunt May. Of course, can we really blame Peter for this one? Not so much. He was a zombie and he wasn't really in control here. But knowing Peter, you can bet he likely reminisced and blamed himself continuously for this for days on end, even while he was a zombie. Because, you know, Peter just loves to blame himself for everything. And before we move on to this next spot, just a quick little reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying it. It really helps us out at the channel, and thank you if you've already done it.
Number 8. Allowed a kidnapping. In Amazing Spider-Man number 112, we see Spider-Man really worried about Aunt May. She's gone missing after Gwen Stacy gave her a hard time for meddling in Peter's life too much, and he spent most of the previous issue searching for Aunt May. In this issue, we see Spidey has become so distracted, he doesn't even notice this guy getting kidnapped nearby. What's worse, when Pete does notice this guy, who also notices him, he starts the classic Spidey monologue about how helping this poor slob will take hours. Hours he could spend searching for Aunt May. He actually leaves the guy to get kidnapped, saying, maybe someday I'll have the courage to face myself again. Damn, Pete, you could have easily stopped and saved this guy. If that wasn't bad enough, later on it turns out that Aunt May wasn't even missing, she just had a new job. Way to go, Spidey.
Number 7, worst boyfriend ever. I wish I could say this was a one-time instance, but this is one of the worst, most consistent things that we've seen from Peter Parker throughout all of his relationships. He's not only super awkward around the ladies, but also has a tendency to behave badly with his romantic partners as well. For one, Peter very rarely lets people in on his secret of being Spider-Man, which causes a lot of problems early on in relationships that usually end up causing a breakup before things get super serious. And you might be thinking to yourself, but wait a minute, Amanda, hasn't Peter Parker told Mary Jane before that he's Spider-Man? Yes, but she also apparently knew from like day one that he was Spider-Man, so I don't know if that even counts because she knew the whole time. But beyond that, he also says, thinks, and does kind of things that are just in general awful. He snapped at his partners, lied to them, gotten them into all kinds of danger, blamed them for things that weren't their fault, and even at times physically hit them. Like when Mary Jane tried to break up a fight between Peter Parker and his clone Ben Reilly, and in a mindless rage, he slammed her back, causing her to go flying into a wall. Also, Spider-Man is super strong, so even if he like flicked Mary Jane, I imagine that would be terribly painful. Oh, and she was also pregnant at the time with their child, which just makes it even worse.
Number 6. He almost robbed a jewelry store. Okay, I know this isn't supposed to be top 10 things Spider-Man almost did, but I have to mention another really weird out of character Spider-Man moment. In Amazing Spider-Man number 87, Spidey has been suffering from an illness that he determines to be the radioactivity in his blood slowly killing him. He's been feeling delirious for a while and having a hard time using his powers properly, and he's swinging around the city, monologuing, wondering what it means for his future. Suddenly, he remembers it's Gwen Stacy's birthday, classic Peter, and he doesn't have a gift. So in a bizarre moment, we see Spider-Man randomly decide to break into a jewelry store and he steals a necklace for her. He realizes what he's doing before it's too late and he kind of like puts it back, but he's already caused property damage and like, you know, thank God they don't have cameras because Jameson would just have a field day with that. The whole thing is just a really weird moment. Spider-Man starting to wonder if he's losing his mind. The whole thing was really surprising to me and he almost went through with it.
Number 5, killed MJ again. Yeah, for someone who claims to love her so much, Peter is not very good at treating MJ well. This one comes to us from another alternate reality though, so we do have to, you know, asterisk and add that in there, little editor note. Because of course, Peter would never kill Mary Jane in the main continuity, or more, he just hasn't done so yet. In the reality of Spider-Man Reign, we're taken to a potential future reality where Peter killed Mary Jane simply by loving her. Their being intimate, at least that's what's implied, caused Mary Jane to be exposed to Peter's radioactivity at a level where she ended up getting cancer and dying. His radioactive fluids. Yeah, that's pretty intense. In typical Peter fashion, this becomes one of his greatest regrets, giving MJ cancer, and only serves to basically drive him insane and turn him senile, which really doesn't help anyone and makes for a pretty crazy story when he returns as a bizarre and depressed version of Old Man Spider-Man. Old Man Spider-Man is super depressing.
Number 4. Worked for the JACKAL. The whole clone saga was definitely one of Spidey's lowest points, especially just the way that they totally messed with Peter's character throughout the whole thing. He was calling himself the Spider and just acting generally unpleasant, but when he found out that he wasn't the real Peter Parker but a clone, he really didn't receive that news very well. The JACKAL somehow ends up convincing Pete to work with him, and somehow Peter buys it, even though it means working against his friend Ben Reilly. Peter eventually does come to his senses, but man, how could he have ever been convinced to work with a supervillain in the first place? You know, every time I look back on this era, I remember why people hate it so much. Both versions of Spider-Man are pretty decent, but the way that they're pitted against one another as if there can only be one and everything, the whole thing just felt kind of forced.
Number 3 was too apathetic. Spider-Man's apathy is something that haunts him to this day and makes him pretty much the one to blame for his Uncle Ben's death. Well, I mean, I personally think Peter is much too hard on himself here, and that being that harsh only leads to more disasters later down the road that his intense sense of responsibility has a hand in causing, but I digress. Peter for sure thinks this is the worst thing he has ever done, allowing the man who would go on to kill his uncle to get past him. At the time when the guard who pursued the criminal asked for help, Peter simply didn't see the point in aiding. That wasn't his job, he thought. He wasn't a hero. However, afterward he learned that with great power comes great responsibility, a lesson that has haunted him and continues to both haunt and inspire him to this day.
Number 2. He killed Charlemagne. In the one-shot Spider-Man vs. Wolverine from 1987, we get to witness an epic showdown between these two fan favorites. Peter winds up in Germany investigating a mysterious arms dealer. Charlemagne turns out to be an old associate of Wolverine's, and she's got all kinds of people after her. They track her to East Berlin, where Wolverine plans to kill her, sparing her from being tortured by the KGB. Spider-Man isn't really cool with the whole killing her part of the plan, so the two of them have a bit of a fight about it. However, after a helicopter breaks up the fight for a second, Peter's spidey sense kicks in, and thinking that Wolverine is behind him, he turns around and delivers a full-powered punch, instantly killing Charlemagne. It's implied that she probably intended for this to happen, as she was wanting to die and stuff, but still, if you had told me that Spider-Man once punched a woman with no superpowers and killed her in one hit, I'd be a little skeptical. but it really happened.
Number 1. Probably killed Gwen Stacy. Once again, Peter is causing harm to those he loves. What's more, this whole moment where he attempted to save Gwen and we hear her neck snap is made even worse for Peter in terms of his own guilt over the situation by the fact that he never really knows if it was him or if it was Green Goblin who is to blame for her death. Was she dead before he grabbed her, or did she die when his webbing latched on to save her, breaking her neck? We still don't really know for sure, although I think Green Goblin claims that she died while she was falling. He's like, a fall like that, she'd die before she hits the ground. And I'm like, wait, is that how falling works? It's not. Anyways. I mean, either way, Peter Parker is kind of to blame here, as Green Goblin has a tendency to target those that Spider-Man loves. So once again, just loving Gwen was in a way a terrible thing for him to do to her.
Superheroes should have like a no girlfriends policy or
They
something.
really should. They should be like, we should not date people. It's not gonna go well. Man, Spider-Man has also done some pretty bad things as well.
Yeah, it's always a sad look at a hero when we're counting up the worst moments, but you know, we love them and they do the best that they can.
This is true, except for when, you know, they don't. What are some other awful Spider-Man moments you guys can think of?
Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll see you all in the next video. I'm Patty D.
And I'm Amanda McKnight. You stay nerdy, YouTube.